and trust your gut feeling. If your gut is telling you that this isn't a match, then get out.
Welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. Tips, tools, and tactics for living a heart-centered life that honors Mother Earth and her inhabitants. The information shared on the Sustainable Living Podcast reflects the opinions of host Marian West, Janice Friant, and their guests. Please use your own discretion in research before applying any information to your individual situation. Now, here are your hosts, Marian and Janice.
We are so honored that today's guest has chosen us and our podcast to share his personal story for the very first time. He has left a high-powered, high-paying career to step into a very different lifestyle in life. Maybe you are thinking about changing a career yourself, and you will find lots of inspiration and tips and tools in this episode. But even if you're not, I encourage you to listen because you will get a lot of insights into what might be going on in your life right now. Oh, I almost forgot. There are at times some background noises. You're hearing some, I don't know what it is. It sounds like a trill or something going on. Please forgive us. It happens just a few times and I couldn't edit it out. Hope you enjoy the show. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. This is Marianne, and I'm here with a very, very special guest. So he is super experienced in dealing with young people. He has been the director of student affairs for a university for 12 years. So kudos for that, because that must have been super difficult. And then he left that position to become a PhD in school safety and what is it? What was it? High-risk decision-making, right?
Yeah, high-stakes decision-making in the military, in education, and also in healthcare.
And he has been on TV. So we are just a podcast. So we're having a famous person in front of us. Oh. He has written a script on safety, and he's writing a book. And he has a podcast. So welcome, David Perrodin. Did I say it right?
Yes.
To our podcast. I'm so pleased to have you here.
The pleasure's all mine. I love the Sustainable Living Podcast, and I'm honored to be a guest. Thank you.
Cool. So first off, before we want to talk today a little bit about your personal journey, how I already said you have done so much in your life already, and you're moving into more and more interesting directions. But since we mentioned that you have a podcast, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your podcast and how listeners can find you.
Yeah, thanks. On Twitter, at SafetyPhD is the way to follow me and get updates about the podcast. SafetyPhD.com is my website, and that's the clearinghouse for the podcast. There's a blog that goes with it, some articles that I've written, so things of that nature. I'm on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Blueberry.
Everywhere.
Pretty easy.
Good.
Yeah, pretty easy to find me. So yeah, and I do one podcast a week. It is safety themed. I do agency and purpose, about personal safety, mental health, depression, but also physical safety. I did a podcast last night, which will be released in that studies the Murrah building bombing and the World Trade Center attacks and how those two are substantially different, even though they were just 6 years apart. So just kind of all over the place with that. A number of guests, too. About half my shows, I have guests in various expertise areas of safety. So, yeah.
Yeah, so definitely. I know that in our podcast, we have talked about personal safety and preparedness a lot. And this is really what you do in your show a lot is, not prepared. Well, you do also do preparedness if there's a doomsday kind of situation. But a lot of it is about personal being ready for, we just talked about, said, where David is sitting, there's rain coming down, and they're expecting
Yes.
4 inches of rain, and we might hear some thunder in the background. I'm sitting in a complete drought.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
we're,
Okay.
yeah, in California, it doesn't rain in California, you know. So I was saying for us, 4 inches of rain would be a disaster. We're talking water in everywhere,
Oh
you know,
wow.
just, yeah, yeah. We had 2 inches last winter. That's the only time it rains here. And the garage was flooded. My neighbors had to run pumps to try to get stuff away. So, yeah, so definitely you even talk about those kind of preparedness at times in your podcast. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
If you're listening, which of course you are listening, if you're hearing our voices, make sure you check out David's podcast. I highly recommend it. We had talked prior about a great personal journey you have done. And do you want to start maybe with when you were the director of student affairs and how your life was like at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I talked to you, and we developed the kind of the outline for this show, it was January of 2014 was this monumental point in my life where it just my life went in a completely different direction, which was unanticipated, but was absolutely what was needed for me. So I've been a director of student services for a dozen years, and in that capacity, working with students with disabilities, families, and very rewarding. I love the job, but very, very demanding and high stress. And people would bring in advocates. Issues would go on where, I mean, you'd have to have your phone on 24 hours a day, and you'd just be bombarded by emails and voicemails. And after a while, it started to affect me. I would say from, like a deficit perspective. I was very good at my job, but every day you anticipated something negative was going to happen, and it typically did, and you'd have to deal with it and support people around you who would be dealing with that. So that was 12 years of my life, and I completed my doctoral program out of UW-Madison, all of my courses, and reached a point where then I needed to go in and actually do the field study, and a lot of people stop actually once they complete their courses. They don't go on and complete the PhD. They call it ABD, all but doctorate. So I went in and just switched totally out of what I was doing, devoted my life to 2 years of research through a fellowship, got to be an expert, and just life went in a completely different direction for me, and in a great way, really in a great way.
What I'm hearing, just having your phone on 24 hours and expecting an emergency anytime, right there, that's like hugely stressful. And you also have a family, right?
Yeah, thank you. In the next week from today is my youngest daughter's birthday. She'll turn 7, so a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old. And I was becoming really disconnected from my family, long hours. And this is probably pretty typical of a lot of people. I think what's unique for me is I had the opportunity when I was about 40, 41 years old to make this change in my life. And I think for a lot of people, it doesn't happen until they retire. And you look back and it's like, oh my goodness, my kids are grown. I never really got to know them. I never got to do things with them. And I never developed my own interest. And here I am and all these great years are gone, and my body's broken down by stress and so forth. So yeah, a young family. I was getting home late. I'd be tired. I would get home, fire up the computer, log into the system at work, check emails. And there was a time we were on vacation. We just got back we had 2 family vacations we took already this year. Yesterday we were at the splash pad. The last week we've been at the basketball court as a family, my wife and I, my 2 daughters, and just doing fun things we could have never done before because I wouldn't have been home, first of all. But we were on vacation maybe 6-7 years ago, and I remember there was this rural little restaurant, and they had a train that came through and it delivered your food, and so it'd pull up in front of you and the plate would be on it. And my daughter was into Thomas the Train, I think, or at that time, and she's maybe 3-4 years old, And we're all excited to go to this place. And we pull up and my phone rings and there was an issue going on back in the organization. Couldn't put it off. It was very intense at that moment. So I told my wife, take the girls in, and she did. And I never made it in. I had to stay out in the vehicle, deal with this. And then at that moment, it's ruined. I mean, I didn't get to experience that. I'll never go back and get to experience that. But then it's not like you can just shut it off, because I knew I kind of played the role of being, the dad and doing things with the kids. I think we still were going to like a beach that day. But in my mind, I'm thinking as soon as I get home, I have to log on and there's going to be all these emails and I'm going to be blind carboned and carbon copied. And then I'm going to have to come up with a response. I'm going to have to call people tonight yet. In the morning, another round of this will happen. The stress was just unreal. And I had friends who did the same job, and they would say, one time we were sitting around and they said, do you sleep on Sunday nights? And I said, wow, that's an odd thing to ask. I'm like, no, really, I don't. And they're like, no, we don't sleep either. Like, once you get into the late Sunday, you anticipate what's going to happen on Monday. So you're going in and checking your email and you're trying to prep yourself. And usually on Mondays, it's always like a whole administrative team meeting. And those typically, again, aren't positive.
That's how you put it very nicely. They aren't positive.
No, they're not. I mean, it's all the issues. And the thing is, I would always, like, you'd have mission statements in the organization, like, we'll have fun. We'll be, and those would never happen. And if you even smiled or had that hint of fun, people would be like, how are you not taking this serious? Like, what's happening? I mean, it could be something like a pen dries up on you and as you're writing something and you just kind of laugh because you didn't have another one with you. Well, something like that could be perceived as others, that you're making light of like this whole stress that the situation is under. Everybody has limited resources and things. And I mean, everybody was so touchy and edgy all the time. Mm-hmm. And that just transferred to me. When I finally did leave the position, my parents said to me, every time the phone rang and it would come up with your caller ID, we kind of look at each other like, who's going to answer it? Because David is going to be negative. He's going to be upset about something. And I didn't realize I was transferring what was happening to me onto others, onto my family. And I feel really bad about that. I feel like I've reconciled that. And I had a really good friend I sat down with, and I said, tell me honestly. And she's like, yeah, your emails are just, you could just sense the anger and all of this stuff. And you weren't really an uplifting person to be around. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that just broke me. I felt it was just really sad. And I know we talked previously.
Yeah, but I think you just made such a huge point, because being in a stressful situation like that really affects our whole being. And, we talk a lot about, and I think you also do in your podcast, about, you talk about depression, you talk about those things, and they have roots in life. And if you're in so much stress, it's very hard to now be an uplifting person to somebody else. When we take it further, I mean, not saying that you are taking it further, but there are people which express their stress in a very negative manner. And that's kind of what you are trying to prevent, right? So it's having this insight in your own life, what this kind of environment can do to you in your personal relationship is so powerful. And it's probably really helpful for you in your further work.
It is. And actually, as I talk about this today, I have never shared this story publicly before. I was really guarded about it because I looked at it initially as a personal failure. I mean, I had always risen to the challenge. Like I, was after the Sandy Hook massacre of 2012, I was the person that did the PBS presentation about school safety that aired in all of the states in Canada multiple times. And I had always just felt I could rise and could rise above these forces. I sat down with my doctor and she said, and she was younger than I was. And she said, David, your health is horrible. You're overweight by like 40, 50 pounds. And I did send a picture, you can share on the blog.
Yeah, we will. Mm-hmm.
Because the picture shows that I was obese. I just looked bad at what was the pinnacle of my career in student services. And I actually have it right in front of me. One thing is my doctor in a recent checkup printed this off and gave it to me. And she said, your risk in the next 10 years of heart disease or stroke, so I'm 45, is 1.4%. And she said, which is like super, super, super low. And she said that 1.4% was about 40% before you left the job.
Oh, wow.
That you would have that. So she said, I wouldn't have been surprised at all if you would have had a heart attack or stroke. My blood pressure was crazy. My cortisol levels, like in your blood, your stress, like they never left. I had mono for 8 months. I couldn't get over it. It was just nonstop to the doctor. And that's all gone too. But yeah, so I'm doing this public TV presentation, which really went well. And I'm watching it, and I'm looking and looking at this person wearing this, large sport coat, and my face is kind of blotchy, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, like I was terrified at what I saw, and then my doctor is telling me too. She said, Dave, you're not taking care of yourself, and I can tell you're not happy, and I didn't find there wasn't any way out. I mean, and I didn't know. I felt trapped. And I think people get that way in careers, especially when things you start to gain that.
Absolutely.
I remember, I felt trapped.
So when you did make that step, did you have made that realization already, or did you use your dissertation as kind of your lifeline excuse that your subconscious gave you a way out to be able to leave that job behind?
Yeah. I realized before I left the job, probably about 6 months before I left it, every morning when I got up, it was just like, can I get through this day? All the plates are spinning, and it was going to fall. I knew it was going to collapse, that either physically I was going to give out, mentally I was going to give out. And I just knew I couldn't keep doing it. And then it turned out to be, as people would say, a blessing in disguise, I guess. We had a change in administration, and that was one of the things too that prompted me to seriously look at, did I want to stay where I was at with that change in administration, which wasn't a good match for me. One of the things that before I left, I remember going to a meeting and I had to play the role of the tough person, representing the organization. We had advocates and parents and other people from the outside, and they were advocating for a student with a disability. And I had to represent, again, the organization and just make sure that what they were asking and what we could provide, we could come to an agreement on that. And I remember during this meeting that I just got so upset that I felt our staff was being attacked. And I just kind of let loose. And when I walked out of this meeting, I'm calling a lot of people out and things like that. My staff is like, oh, this is great. You stood up for us. And I remember the principal on the way to the parking lot at the meeting, this other administrator is telling me, that was great. Like that was, boy. And I felt horrible. That wasn't me. That was the acting me of having to go so much against what I felt inside. And I felt awful. And I'm like, this is the way life is going to be. Like I'm going to have to come in and just be this bad person, or it felt so natural. So that, and then I realized that I tried to do the dissertation is wild. It's like a 200-page document. You have to do tons and tons of research. And I couldn't do it like in the current job. I couldn't get home and log in, do a little bit of family time and stuff, and then try to do like a dissertation from 12 midnight to 2 in the morning. So it was this point where it needed to be a clean break. It was very unknown on the other side for me what was going to happen. And thankfully, I had support of my family, but it was really, it was hard, but at the same time, it was this weight that was lifted off. I didn't miss the position at all. Not one part of the position. I can talk about what happened too right after that, which is very interesting. And again, maybe people have experienced this, but it was something for me, like being as, I guess, strong and accomplishing all these things, in my career. And then suddenly not having that to kind of delaminate from that wasn't me anymore.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting because I feel, so you made a choice to leave your position. There are people which want to make that choice and feel they can't, like a little bit like you said that you didn't see a way out for a while, where you knew this was really stressful, but you couldn't see different. And also people are with their self-worth a lot of times are attached to a certain position. You had a certain amount of reach just by having that title and by being in that position. So how did you deal with now being not the director of student services?
That's a great question, and it's something I had always aspired to have this position with this one organization for years, and finally this position had opened up. And I went and, applied, and a number of people applied, and I got this position. And it was one of those things, too, where I think it was this whole thing. And I talk about this in my book, Lessons of Lower Manhattan, this transference dynamic of I really was just so enamored with the position that I never really studied how I would fit the position. And I was willing to accept a lot of things with the position that necessarily weren't a good fit for me, just because, again, I was in this organization that I had admired from the outside. And there were a lot of great things with the organization. It wasn't a good fit for me. I should have probably never left the organization I was with, which was a great fit. But this was, again, a perceived step up the ladder, and, again, a bigger organization, more resources, things like that. So once this is done, it's done. And the strange thing, too, is like people in the organization, some of them will continue to contact you and want to associate with you. And others it's done. Once you leave, like you've either abandoned them or it's some strange psychology, even like people I would reach out to that I would consider friends. And it's like, no, once you're gone, you're gone. I'm like, so that was kind of weird. It was, you get up in the morning. I was used to getting up and, of course, going to work in the long days. And suddenly that wasn't there. I'm getting up. And I am going to our local library with my backpack, just like a 18-year-old kid. And almost, it's all filled with, research documents. I'm going through and just to, get out of the house. And I struggled because it just wasn't my thing. And I added into that routine. My oldest daughter at the time was in second grade, and the school is a few blocks from our house. And I would get up and I would walk her to school. In that 2 blocks, she would tell me things that I never even knew about her or the things that were going on in her life. And I always make sure I was there at the end of the day to pick her up and walk her home. And it was so meaningful for me. I am so blessed that I had that time. She'd come out of school with a big smile, running and, saying bye to her friends and hand me her backpack. And Dad, I did this today. Or, hey, open up the backpack. I have this drawing of whatever. Or, I've got my clay turtle or whatever it is. And I'm like, looking back, I'm like, I'm so glad I got to do that. But the nights would set in for me initially. I'd kind of freak out because my routine was so different. I just felt very anxious. So 2 things started to happen probably within like 1 or 2 weeks of me leaving this position, after probably what a normal time off would be if you were vacation going somewhere again. And there really was no vacation because you're always connected. But I had this anxiety set in. And of course, it's Wisconsin, and I left the position at the semester. So it's winter, it gets dark at 4:00 and it's cold. And I would go to the local Walmart and I would walk the aisles just to have light. And I was anxious. And then I did that for a few weeks, like just at night, because it's a strange feeling. And then I started to walk. Like I would bundle up. And again, we're talking, like might be like 0 degrees out, and it didn't matter if it was like, wind chill of whatever. I would just bundle up and I would leave and I would walk at night. And I had like a reflective vest and a flashlight, things people should do if they do stuff like this. And I'd walk around our town. It's a town of 10,000 people. So it would take me maybe like 3-4 hours. And I did that every night. And I didn't realize why I was doing this. I didn't realize at all why I'm doing this walking. My mind is not like processing through things. It was just blank. I was just kind of taking in the environment. Like I remember very clearly, that the snow would wisp across fields and I could see the patterns, in the moonlight. And as it would hit me and it would kind of wrap around me and go past me. And I remember listening and hearing deer walking through the woods, because I would kind of go off in patterns and just things you never would tune into. And the starlight and so all of a sudden then I started to process in my mind, like who I was, what I wanted to be, kind of this whole Zen thing. And I did what everybody does. I bought all the Zen books. My friends are sending.
And actually, your walking was a
Yeah.
sensing. I mean, when you were saying it, it's like, oh, yeah, you practice mindfulness coupled with exercise. So, walking meditation.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was happening, looking back, my body, I believe, was just screaming to me of get out and get me healthy, David, get me healthy. My body, the soma and the psyche were not connected. And I lost this massive amount of weight, like really fast, just by cutting out the stress and not eating, fast food at 8 o'clock at home. And I lost like all of this weight, which it hasn't come back. I just got down to what my normal weight, I guess, should be. And then I started to have what I would call appreciations, where I was just finding myself thankful for, like, I'd walk and be like, I'm thankful that I'm out here and I'm healthy. I'm thankful for tonight and being able to, it's a full moon and the stars are out. And I would even go out. The only time I wouldn't go out at night, and this is to this day, is if it's like severe weather. That was it. If it was raining, I put a rain jacket on. I would pay attention to things like the pavement, the asphalt, where you don't realize, but it's arched a little bit. So as the rain hits it, it goes off on the left side and the right side. And it's just this neat pattern in the way that the streetlights, as the rain goes past the streetlights, and just these little things I started to notice. Again, I found myself talking out loud of just like, I'm thankful for this, I'm thankful for that. And I started to process through, and I still do that to this day. It's kind of funny because as I go past, if anyone, I go past, I have to pretend I'm talking on a phone. So you're like, hey, it's the crazy guy who talks to himself. What's going on?
I love it. You just gave a full therapy session, how to heal anxiety. Oh. Thank you so much. You got into mindfulness, gratitude. It's great. And it's so amazing that you just intuitively got to that place of finding those ways of healing. Because it sounds like you were so damaged by so much stress. Stress does, as we know, more and more research is done, what negative effects stress can have on the body, on the mind, on the soul. So this is great. I love it how you became your own therapist.
It was amazing, in how the body tells you what it needs. Again, I didn't have that conscious connection to what was really happening, but my body, by getting out and doing that walking, and then it brought forward into the consciousness. I felt so resilient too. Like, things could happen in life and I knew that I could handle them and get through them. And one of the things, I had watched my PBS presentation, and I remember at the start they said, how do you want to be introduced? So I typed up this, like 2-page thing. It's like, list every accomplishment I've ever had in my entire life. So they start off and they're reading that. I felt so, I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, like, that just seems bragging. Like, that just seems like that person at that time, the David at that time, was so laminated to these accomplishments. And that's what defined me. I didn't come up and have them say, David studies this, likes to spend time with his family, doing vacations to beaches and playing basketball with them and stuff. There was nothing like that. Or, David loves to bike. That's something I got into too, is I did a lot of biking. But it was all this, very specific, serious job stuff to put your credentials out there. And it's so funny because even today, I have people that I interview on my show, and before I interview them, they'll tell me I'm nervous because you have a PhD and I watched some of your stuff, and I'm like, whoa, like, don't worry about it. Like, I'm not laminated to this title. I'm glad of what I've done, and I've been on TV and stuff like that. But I said, no, like, look at you. I'm interviewing because of what you're bringing to the show. But I've had a couple of people say that, and I just get a kick out of it because I'm like, oh my goodness.
But that's kind of how we have been functioning as a society, to value credential over everything else. And I find it really interesting that especially a lot of men seem to be making that shift now to not be so attached to the title anymore, but to look more at different values in their life. Like, I heard you talk about your children and how you value being a present father, stuff like that, which didn't used to be something a man could really say.
I agree with that. I agree that it definitely has connected me a lot more with my children. Yeah, and actually, my youngest daughter will enter middle school this year. So I love the things that we do, and I love the discussions that we have, and just the activities and being present with them and doing things with one. Having just a time that I'm going to do a bike ride with this daughter, or this daughter and I, or we'll do something else. But yeah, it's meant so much to me. And an aha moment was about 4 months after, or maybe it was a little longer than that, but after I left this high stress position, my wife set up the garage for a garage sale, rummage sale. I'm looking, and there's this whole area of toys. I'd pick them up and hold them and say, when did we have this? Whose is this? Is this, which daughter did this? I don't even remember this. And I remember there was like a tea set, little plastic teacups and that. And my wife's like, that was in, my one daughter had that for 2-3 years. And I'm like, I never did a tea party with her. A lot of these toys, I didn't even know they existed. It was one of these hard hitting moments and maybe you're right. Maybe as a male, we don't talk about this a lot, because with my male friends, I had one friend I could really talk about, what I was kind of feeling. And I said, I felt just so bad. I never did these things. And I didn't even know these toys existed. And I just sat, and it was a crushing moment. But now it's something where I'm very much into with my daughters, doing things, making sure that taking an interest. They're doing, like if it's a game of Uno, that we sit down and we play a game of family Uno or things like that. So yeah, I'll never forget being in the garage. I mean, it's just like it's frozen in my mind, this image of me like looking and holding these and no expression on my face and almost wanting to just like close the door and just like cry, because I had lost out on this stuff and times I would never get back. I mean, it was tough.
I believe it. It just is interesting to me because I have other friends which have left the corporate world, so to speak, to be more with their family. And it's not an easy move. And I fear, especially our audience, there are so many people which want that, but are not necessarily seeing how to survive on the other side of that jump. Right. And I think if you look at what it costs to live, and if you're conservative, and actually things don't mean a lot to me. I want to have a few nice things, but things don't mean a lot to me. And the people I had worked with in the corporate world, someone would show up with a $85,000, $100,000 car. Well, and 2 weeks later, someone else would have something similar. And I never kind of subscribed to that. Or very expensive, clothing and things like that. I mean, it was all of this weird competition thing too. But yeah, for me, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter to me. Like I think I've evolved beyond that, maybe. So that's been really fun for me too. Is I don't have this wanting of material items. I don't go on Amazon and put together a big list of things and stuff like that. Even like when I bought my studio arm here for my podcasting, which I love doing and I think reaches people. It's become a great, hobby as far as, and also I think a public service. And for me, I think therapeutic too. It was kind of like, do I really need this or don't I need this? But no, I'm like, no, I'm going to get it because it helps me out with my work here podcasting. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a lot of that status thinking and we need to do more. Living in California, of course, just to have a place to live in is very expensive. Kind of like New York City and some other places. You need a certain amount of income just to be able to have a roof over your head, so to speak. But those are choices too people sometimes make. I have friends which moved away from here, though they could be more with their kids or pursue more what they considered important in life, besides just working. But you still keep very busy, so...
Yeah, things I'm doing now I never would have imagined that I'd be doing. And before I get into that, I want to share something that happened to me too, kind of, which was in this transition out of being this laminated, and this is a term I just came up with, this laminated personality, which I would describe as, if someone asks you who you are, and if you're saying, I am an accountant with whatever firm or whatever, if that's how you're responding, you have a laminated personality. If you're responding, I love biking and am married and have 3 children, and I work with whatever. I mean, if that's part of a discussion, then I think you're delaminated. But I think that's a very distinct way. Like if you just pay attention to how you're describing yourself and you're putting it out there of like this job title, and that's what I was doing. But I had a friend I'd worked with early in my career, and she developed cancer, and terminal cancer. And I went to visit her. This was about, it was less than a year after I had left it was probably about 3-4 months after I'd left the position. So I'm questioning myself a little bit still. I'm still finding my way. I'm working on my dissertation. And that was a struggle too, because my mind, I had done a lot of technical writing, but writing in a dissertation is completely different. But I visit my friend Connie, who I've known a long time, has terminal cancer. So she's at her house in her hospital bed by her window, so she can look out. And again, she only has at that point months to live. I go up and see her, and we have just a great time. I had worked with her again early in my career. We stayed in contact through email and things like that. And she had lost her hair, but it had a wig on. And it's something that really struck me. Like I showed up and she made sure like that her family had, like some snacks for me and things like that. I'm like, oh my goodness, like you're terminal cancer. You only have, don't worry about me. Like I'm here just to see you. And she wanted just to make me feel so welcome. And I sat and we had this great time. And as I left, she said to me, today's the last day I'll ever see you. I said, no, I'll come back. And she said, no, I don't want you to come back. And she said, here's why. This was so great today. If you come back and see me, I'm going to be emaciated. I'm probably going to be drugged. I'm not going to know who you are. I'm going to have IVs. And I don't want you to see me that way. I want you to remember this. And this is how I want to remember you. Oh, it was, again, one of these reflective moments. And I drove home, and it was about 2 hours to drive home. And I had the radio off, and I just thought about that. She passed away a few months later, and I miss her because her sense of humor was just awesome. I thought, what a level of respect for her also to have that discussion with me. And sometimes people say to me, boy, that sounds really cold that somebody would do that. I'm like, no, actually, it was really respectful, and really, we had this great time, and I can totally see where she's coming from. And again, it was this moment where I'm saying, we're about the same age. Like, this could be me. Am I getting the most out of life? Am I grabbing life and getting everything I can? Because she still was. I mean, she was making sure with her grandkids, she was doing it as much as she could. She's getting on the laptop and connecting up with people. And so, yeah, I'm like, wow, when you lose somebody close and similar in your age, the small things I'm not going to sweat.
For sure. And I think a lot of people come to SAD when they're hit with disease themselves. So you were kind of just getting out in time, right? When your doctor was telling you had a 45% chance of having a heart attack. So seeing somebody close, it just really reminds you what is really important. We feel, if we don't do this, the world is coming to a standstill. It's not, it's the world goes on, and we have to make daily choices. How do we want to show up in that world? So yeah, I really like that you point out how quickly our life can be gone, and so to be very conscious about what do we do every single day with our lives? What's important?
Yeah, absolutely. So once I delaminated from this, all of a sudden, some new opportunities start in that I never even thought were out there. I was contacted by a representative for David Obst, and David Obst is a Hollywood producer, Pulitzer Prize winning author for the LeMay Massacre, which involved the Vietnam War. So really, this high-profile Hollywood producer gets in contact with me and is working on this school intruder film, and knew that I was an expert in the area of that topic. It basically said, would you be willing to consult on like 8 scenes or something? And basically tell us technically if we have this right. So David and I hit it off. And I come into this, I'm not nervous at all, because it's like, well, if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I wasn't planning on this. And we just had so much fun. And he's such a brilliant guy. And we ended up co-writing the entire script. We co-wrote it and co-directed this entire film. It was so much fun for me. And, he told me toward the end, he said, I love working with you. I wish he's about 70, I'm 45. He said, I wish we would have had our careers line up at the same time so we could have done other things together. And I just thought that was such a compliment. And I had so much fun doing it. And I remember we're going through and he's like, oh, what is the slug line? Or where's I'm like, I don't have any background in this. I'm like, you've made movies. You've done this. I've watched movies. So he's like, okay, I'll teach you. And it was amazing because he taught me. He's like, here's how to do this. And if you're going to pan over, here's how you set this up. And here's what the scene. And then I would share things back on my expertise. I'm like, well, I think we need to have where we can hear what's happening in the person's mind. So how do we do that? What's a thought bubble that someone narrates? He's like, okay, here's how we do that. And we just, again, we worked so well. We did this entire thing in probably 3 months and then started into the podcast, and he was able to connect me up with the publishing house. I had this idea for the book about September 11th. And I said, I think there's been a lot written about the boat rescue, 500,000 people in 9 hours. And there's this movie coming out, Dunkirk, from 1940, which is kind of similar to that. But I said, there's big pieces of this that people are missing that no one has ever written about. And I said, I'd like to approach this in a different way. So I put this whole book proposal together and worked with a publishing house. And they loved it. And they gave me a contract. I thought if I do anything, I probably would write and self-publish. But no, they gave me a contract. And it was a weird thing because I didn't take the advance. I said, no, just put it in escrow, just keep it. And when I give you the final product, it's just kind of old school. It's just the way that I was. I'm like, I didn't want the pressure over me too. I'm like, I'll submit the book. It'll be done. And then at that point, give me that advance. And it was validating too. I love writing. I've been able to connect now with experts around the world in different theories. And I talked to the head of military medicine. I've gotten to know him. I was actually on vacation and another expert had sent me some follow-up information, said, hey, I came across this, thought it might help your work. It was ironic. Last night I interviewed someone who was an officer, the war with Iraq, and was talking about some of the leadership activities. And there was a specific example that he gave that I'm incorporating into the book. But yeah, you get to meet these incredible people. And being on your show, is something would have never been there for me because I wouldn't have had the time. I wouldn't have had the reflection. And two, you would have been scrutinized if you do anything like this in that organization. Even when I did the public television presentation, which was, I had nothing, no fiscal gain or anything from that. It was 37 pages of citations. It was empirical. Like I said, here's what people need to know that's not rhetoric. It's not coming from the news and all of that stuff, like the actual research. Some people definitely resented me for doing that because it was taking a little bit of limelight. I'm thinking it was kind of like, your job isn't to do this. Your job is to do this. I'm like, oh, this is like a hobby. I did this at home. But yeah, all these interesting things. And I've done expert witness stuff in some legal cases. So because I know this so well from the other side, the attorneys contact me and say, we have this case and we want to run it by you. And I'm working right now in a case out of Ohio. Again, it's not high stress at all because I know it. I'm easygoing. And if I feel like it's something that is going against the grain with me, I'll exit. And I haven't had to do that, but I have that built into the agreements. I would exit.
Sounds you let go of that attachment to this is what it has to be. This is my title and I have to function a certain way. And suddenly you opened up and all this stuff came to you. And it sounds like you're having fun with whatever you're doing, which is huge, right? Because if we love what we're doing, then even putting a lot of energy towards it doesn't feel stressful. It doesn't feel that your life has to end otherwise. You still keep your other priorities.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funniest thing, too, is this past year, I bought a pair of all red running shoes. And
excellent.
So somebody saw me and they're like, are those all red shoes? I'm like, yes, they are. I wear glasses and my glasses have skulls on the outside. On each side, and they're really cool looking, actually. And someone's like, "You have skulls on your glasses?" I said, "Yeah, I like this frame." And it just happened to be this Ed Hardy or whatever, who's a tattoo artist. And so, that's kind of my thing. Not that I've gone with this total alter ego or anything, but it's kind of fun. And I love biking. I bought this beautiful bike probably like 8 years ago, and the most I ever biked was like 5-6 miles, and I would consider that a long bike trek, and I would be all worn out. I might do that a couple times this summer. And then now I'll go out and I'll bike, and I'll do like 70-80 miles, and I'll just do that. I'll pack up my bike with everything that I need: the beef jerky, the water, the Swedish fish, and I mean, there's this whole thing.
Swedish fish.
Yes. And I'll go out on these country roads and make sure my wife knows where I'm at in case anything happened that can find me. But it's so peaceful, and I'll stop and I'll take pictures of just the scenery, and it is so self-reflective, and I find myself just appreciating, feeling the sun on my shoulders, hearing the crickets, just, again, the panorama of beauty, which is a soybean field, which is growing. And the next time you bike past it, and even the little bit of burn in your thighs as you're biking, but then that goes away after a while. There's a cemetery I stop at as kind of a break point on my way out. And there's a gravestone, and it's off on its own, and it's of a young boy. It's always kind of decorated up with things that would be, he was about 10. He passed away a couple of years ago, had some significant disabilities. Actually, I looked up the name and found the obituary. But it's kind of this ritual where I stop at his gravestone, and there's this big boot, this cement boot there, and little windmills and stuff like that. And I just kind of stop and pause and just say a prayer, just an acknowledgement. It's this reflection point for me. So I love this. I love biking, how my body feels. I'm energized, and I'm just so aware of my environment. Also my own body. Like, I can feel the pressure of your feet pressing down on the pedals. The different scents too, as corn gets to be a little closer to being harvested, there's a sweetness that comes off the fields. It's so amazing. It's like I was going through life at full speed with the windows down, and I had no idea what was happening until 2014 when I stopped the car, jumped out, and just started running down this road of life.
I think you have poetry in you too. That's your next next thing. Write poetry. I love how you describe your experiences. So cool. Again, you have come to that place of how moving your body is calming your mind, bringing that reflection. I feel that's such an important lesson because this society is so sedentary. It just feels a lot of stress comes from the body not being able to get rid of it, that nervous energy. Then bringing in that mindfulness of observing nature. And I so relate to you with the biking. I actually rode my bicycle from San Diego to Eugene, Oregon and back at one point. And it was for a long time my daily routine to just jump on the bike in the morning and, you ride your 50 miles and you come back and it's like, yep.
Oh, yeah.
Ready for the day,
Yeah, it's been absolutely, wonderful to do that. Right now, with my daughters, they have an interest in basketball. And I coached basketball. I was 16 years old, the middle school in my hometown, which is a small hometown. They couldn't find anyone to coach middle school basketball, so we weren't going to have the program. So I stepped forward. I was 16, and I said, I'll coach. And so I coached this team, and I did it for 5 years. It was a great experience for me. I love doing it. And now my daughters are interested in basketball, so I'm getting to do that coaching role again in a fun way. Instead of saying, let's do some shot around the world and making sure that dad doesn't always win.
Good.
And here's how to dribble, and here's some of the things, but real lighthearted. And they ask me, they'll say, can we go to the park today and play basketball? So I know that they love doing it, and I have fun. I love that they're seeking out what's interesting to them. They both dance, and they're both very, very different. My one daughter loves to read and will read through, book after book after book after book. And my other daughter is also very much, into reading, but is equally into sports and will be the one that will want to go outside. But yeah, and the other thing is stuff doesn't get to me. You're on such a hair trigger when you're in that corporate world, that stress in that next phone call or opening up that email. And I'd come in the morning and it'd be like, oh my goodness, that light would be flashing of the voicemail. We did a trip to Disney this past March, and it was the first time I'd ever been to Disney World. I went through 5 states I never even went through. I mean, because, tennis, I drove. I wanted to drive because I wanted to do reconnaissance. I wanted to see some things like Paducah, I know the Civil War, the Battle of Paducah. I wanted to just like go through there. So we drove to Florida, and the drive was fine. Like I loved it. I remember on the I-4, they were doing construction. So anyone, the I-4, Interstate 4, right outside Orlando, pretty crazy. And we're sitting there kind of like just stopped, and then you go forward 5 feet, and then you stop. What I realized, I'm sitting there, and I wasn't tense. Like I rolled the windows down, and it was like 82 degrees outside. We left, it was 41 in Wisconsin. And I'm like, oh, it's just like so nice out here. And, in an hour or two, we're going to be getting our exit, and we're going to be going into Disney. But how that would have been for me, I would have been angry. I would have had probably, not like a road rage type person, but I would have just been frustrated. It would have ruined my day, and it would have carried over into supper, and maybe would have kept me up a little bit later at night. But no, I was so in the moment in Disney. I just was there. I love Disney. I love being with my family and everything that we did. In the pictures, we put together a book on Shutterfly afterwards for all of us. And you can just see it. It's there. And that experience with my daughters. And had I done this, again, previously, like 5 years ago, I would have never been there. I would have been there physically. I'd be in the pictures. You wouldn't see it in my eyes. I wouldn't have been there. That's the difference. And so anyone out there making these changes and how hard they are, again, walking the Walmart, and I struggled too, again, with the dissertation. I think my mind was, you're just so out of routine, and which was this, again, weird humility, I guess is the word. I met with my advisor, and he's like, Dave, he goes, you're a smart guy. This isn't coming together for you. He goes, you need to maybe meet with some people. So I scheduled an appointment with the Reading Center on campus, UW-Madison, the Reading Center. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I've been published, I've been all this stuff, and I'm going to the Reading Center. It was in the middle of winter again. I have my backpack, and I'm going across campus. 40,000 people on campus, not a soul out. It is like cold and windy, and there's like Lake Mendota again. This, just this wind is hitting you, and kind of almost like forcing you to say, like, to yourself, is this really worth it? All these points of like, do you really want to keep doing this? And I got there, and I'm working with these people, and they were wonderful. They were absolutely just saints in helping me. And you're not making good transitions from paragraph to paragraph. Here's some ways to do that. And this is different because I used to just like memos for people and just like get the information down. And I'm so thankful for those people. But yeah, I had to step back. And the other part is you have to let people help you, because you can't, in the role that I was at, when you're in this administrative role, high paying, hundreds of people underneath you and all of that, you really can't ask people to help you, because then I think the perception is, well, does David not know what he's doing? Like, you have to present that you always know what's happening. So to ask for help and to just flat out say, I don't know how to transition into this paragraph between this and this. Can you help me? And people are like, yeah. And that's another thing that happened in my life, is just the willingness. And as I started to podcast, like another podcaster reached out to me and said, I can help you like set up your audio. I can totally do that. So here's like how to do this. Here's what gain is. Here's like this, and here's some software to use. I think that ability to be vulnerable is something else that really came forward in me. And I don't ever feel hurt. Like if someone offers to help, where 5 years ago, again, that probably would have been, I would have felt, I don't know if I would have felt insulted. I probably would have felt like, what am I doing wrong? Oh my goodness, someone is seeing this deficit in me that I'm overlooking. So what is it? So yeah, I don't know, but like I said, the Disney trip was awesome. I'm so glad. And yet, like someone said to me, you could have been 60, you could have retired at 65. Your kids would have kids. You would have just been worn down by all of this. You would have never had that experience. Are you going to go to Disney then? I don't know.
Don't you think it's a really common threat that people say, oh, I do that when I'm retired, and then it never happens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Can you put together in a nutshell your advice to somebody who is on the edge, who is living a life where they feel that's not serving them anymore? Their feelings that stress, their knowing that some is different out there. What would be your advice from somebody who has made the jump and has come out very well on the other side?
Yeah. I would say first, trust your gut feeling. And I talk about this a lot in my research. Actually, my dissertation So I studied a lot of military studies and high stakes decision making, because actually for me, this was a high stakes decision. And trust your gut feeling. If your gut is telling you that this isn't a match, if your body, if your doctor, I mean, it's very easy. I mean, are you overweight? Are you sedentary? Do you look in a mirror and it's not the person that you want to be? If those are all the things, then get out. I mean, don't even think twice, because if you have a heart attack, if you have a stroke, and just redundant illnesses, and you're not living life to the fullest, it's not worth it. It's absolutely just not worth it. So if you feel that, trust that tacit knowledge. That tacit knowledge is very strong within your body. And talk to people. I think that's the other thing, is find what I would call member checks. So it's a research term. Member checks means people in the field that know the topic that you're studying, who you can show them your research and say, what do you think about this? Am I on or off? And they'll tell you like exactly. They'll be honest with you, versus people who, like in my position, people would never be honest with me because you were the superior. I mean, you were the boss. You controlled so many things in their lives that you would only get the positive transference from them. But have member checks, people you can sit down with and say, what do you really see? And don't be offended by that. Don't be offended with them if they say to you, like, your emails are really negative, or like, you don't look well. If you're going to make that break, it's not as bad as what you think it's going to be. When you make it, for me, I felt liberated. Even though it's this unknown, there's a lot of great things in the unknown that you're driving by, again, through life right now, and you're not even realizing. So I think that member check, someone to honestly tell you, and if you're not feeling it, and there isn't a way that it's going to change, the part that probably erodes that no one pays attention to is your health. You just start to lose that. And I could visibly see it when I saw that presentation of myself on PBS. The strange thing for me is I don't remember the day that I left. I don't remember a lot of the things. There's like no anniversary on a calendar of this is the date that I left in the hour, and I don't have that. But something that sticks with me is every year on May 22nd, I know that I did that PBS presentation, and I know thousands of, or tens or hundreds of thousands of people had watched that. And I didn't represent I mean, the content is really good, but I look at myself and the image is just horrifying, because I see someone who's literally dying, who has high blood pressure and all of this stuff, and is just there, and in body is dying. And no matter what, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And had I gone down that path, it would have been so stupid to have a heart attack when you have a family and my kids growing up in the things that we're doing now, and imagine not being a part of this. And for me and for myself, of taking care of just how I feel better, of being able to get out and bike. And I love it, versus coming in and being so winded and just like sweat coming off because you can't even bike 5-6 miles. You don't have the capacity. So, and I love your show, and I love the guests that you have on, because a lot of stuff, I got rid of so much stuff that it just doesn't mean anything to, like CDs and, music CDs and stuff like that. I'm like, well, I don't listen to a lot of these anyway, and someone else can listen to them. And if I want stuff, I'll get the things that I need, but you don't need as much in life. Right. And these status symbols are ridiculous. That's another thing. So I go through the cemetery and I'd see these big stones, these massive stones. And I'd ask myself, if that person in that grave could be out of that grave and standing next to me today, and they look at the stone, would they be like, boy, that's a petty thing that all these resources were put into this massive granite monument to me versus somewhere else? And as I told my wife, and I said, when I pass away, I would be cremated and put my remains into this biodegradable container and, off in this location, and that's it. And I said, because I don't believe in things like that.
Yeah, needing to show it. You said two things which really struck me. And one is, here you are a researcher and you have a PhD on the safety aspect and everything. And you just said, follow your gut. And usually people say, oh, that's just omigome. That's also as fluffy hippies, which are talking about their gut feeling. And I think that that's such a powerful advice, because I think deep down we always know if a situation is serving us or not. And like you said, I love also the term about being laminated to your job description, because you can push those feelings down a lot. And I'm sure while you were in that job, there were many times where you knew this was stressful, this was not good for you, but you had to keep up that position for whatever reason. So totally love that. And then the other thing I wanted to throw in, a lot of people which work with dying find that the number one regret of people is that they didn't spend enough time with people they love and with things they love. That nobody regrets not having worked more.
My godfather passed away shortly after I had left this position. And when you start to lose people, it's always this reflection point. I'm glad I had the time with them. Did I really give as much time to them as I could? I don't want to live with that regret. I don't feel regret. Right now, I feel that the change happened early enough in my life that I learned from what happened. I learned what I don't want to go back to. It's like, I can sense it now if I get close to it. It's even like when I work on my book, my book has gotten really, really technical. And it wasn't initially going to go that way, but it's okay. But there's even times on the book when I'll back off and I'll say, I don't want to make this into a research study because this isn't really where I want to go and take on that stress of that. I can sense things that I don't want to get into. People will say like, well, here's a position that's open and this would be like great for you and you could step into this. And I'm like, no. Like, I'm fine. I'm totally fine where I'm at. And I don't know. You can sense it. So yeah, trust your gut. And there's military studies. David Klein did studies with a military researcher in the 1980s, millions and millions of dollars, and comes down, trusting your gut. And that, again, we have this tacit knowledge, and you're going to survive. I mean, you're going to land on your feet, and you're going to realize talents that were open to you and things that transfer and experiences that you have are going to help you. And I think the other part too, and I said it, is things start flowing into you that you never even thought of. Like, I never thought I'd work on a Hollywood movie. I mean, that's ridiculous. And yet I did, and it was fun and it was successful. And had it just not been a match, no problem. That's fine. But yeah, to stay in something that doesn't make you happy, the value of happiness is immense. And I never realized that before. I never valued happiness. I didn't even probably surface knowledge, I guess, of happiness, but I'm truly happy, I would say right now in life. I'm truly happy picking dandelions out of my yard, shoveling them out and looking at the yard afterwards, or, after spending some time with my family, after doing a podcast, talking with neighbors, just whatever. You gain this insightfulness. If you're shopping at a store or something, you see somebody reaching up for something, you go over and say, hey, can I help you with that? 5 years ago, I wouldn't even notice that. I would have been so focused on myself, what I was doing, just the in and out, because I have to get this, now I have to get back, I've got to log in, got to get to my email. And so this office is kind of weird too. Like, I guess now it's a studio, but it was almost like a prison to come down here. And it embodied everything that was going on. I mean, it was a basement, it was dark, it had like dark images around it. And, I've totally refreshed it now too, to be the studio that's productive and creative for me. And I spend a fraction of the time down here than what I did before, but it was actually the space itself even transformed.
So we talked about a lot, David. Is there something else you want to get off your chest?
Oh, sure. Any change has anxiety with it. So be prepared for that and think ahead of saying, I'm going to have anxiety and this is how life will probably be the first 2 weeks after. This is how life will probably be the first month after. And then I think you start thinking, projecting out. And it's okay to go down this route of you read about Zen and you try to find the answers in books that other people have written, because I think you pull pieces out of that reflectively. And there isn't any book that's going to tell you like how to move on in life, but you get pieces out of other people's stories, other people's work. I just think to delaminate is so important for people. And I actually want to focus somehow more of my work later in life in that capacity in helping people delaminate. I'm not sure what that looks like for me. It's just I think I have a good ability to do that and to help people reflect and maybe shift a little more of my podcast into that agency and purpose. It's a very difficult decision to come to. If you're like my friend Connie and you all of a sudden terminal cancer and that's it, and you're gone, that could happen to any of us. I would much rather make the choice to do something that's happy. It doesn't mean that you're going to be without money and other things. I mean, there's going to be a change. I don't make this massive salary that I made before, but through some of these projects, I do fine. And again, you realize what you really need. Going through that cemetery, it's like all of these people, they left everything behind. When you die, it's not like you take things with you. So what do you really need? This retrospection that comes in, introspection that you never do in life, reflection, and reflection without being negative. That's one of the things I talk about in these 9/11 studies and stuff like that, and the Murrah building. At the end, you always get to the part in a study where it's like, here's the people to blame. Here's the people that did things wrong. Here's the communication system that failed. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sick of that. So when I write, I'm like, I look at the process, and I'm like, here's how the process went. And if you understand the process, the outcome doesn't matter. Just if you can improve the process, the outcome naturally will produce better outcomes. So don't worry about assigning blame in all of this. Just improve the process. So if you improve the process of your life, like you get out, you get fit, you're nicer to people, things like that, the outcome, you're going to be happier. The people around you are going to be happier. It's this win-win all the way around. It's hard, but do it. Do it. I never thought this would be me at age 45. I never thought this would be me. And this is the greatest thing ever.
First off, I want to thank David from the bottom of my heart for choosing us in our podcast to share his very personal story of change. I know that a lot of you are thinking about making major changes in your life, or maybe you're in the middle of making those changes. And hopefully it is helpful to hear a story of somebody who has left a career where other people are probably jealous or aspiring to have that career, to choose a much simpler lifestyle and to choose to spend more time with his family. If that is you, if you're in that struggle or thinking about it, go check out David. I'm sure he's open to answer questions or to give a helpful hand. His podcast is more focused right now on safety and preparation type of topics. But you heard him saying that he sees himself in the future being more out there helping people along their journey. As always, we hope you enjoyed this show. And if you feel that we're doing a good job, which I hope you do. I really, truly hope you do and enjoy our shows. But if you want to support us in any way, shape, or form, there are a couple of ways you could do that. Well, let me give you 3. So the first one is we have a website with a little Amazon button. And if you're an Amazon shopper, we would really love it if you click on our button first, and anything you purchase on Amazon the next 24 hours after you click said button benefits us a little bit. It's not huge, small, but a lot of small amounts come up to something too, and it would help us to keep the podcast on the air. Another way to support us is via Patreon. And again, on our website is a button which takes you to our Patreon page. And you can support us with as little as $1 a month, and many dollars a month, again, will lead to being able to support the show better. Now, the third one, this one is not spending money at all. But we do have an email list, and we do not spam people with our emails. They're spare, maybe every 2 weeks, maybe even just once a month. But if you like to stay in touch, find out what's going on, come on over and join the Sustainable Living Geeks tribe. We would love that. Thank you so much for listening, for being part of the Sustainable Living Podcast family. We so appreciate you. Thank you. And share this with a friend. That's a very nice thing to do. You take care. Bye for now.